Ms. County, did you want to make any comments, or you want us to just start right in with our questions or comments?
Please start right in with your questions, because this was given to me by legal counsel, reflecting everything that
Okay.
distilled.
Okay. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Deacon?
Well, I have to say I'm very happy with the streamlined version. As you might expect, I did just would like the board to reflect on number 4, because I'm not sure that we really made a decision about profanity. It's my feeling that that would be included in number 5 about violating professional standards. So I actually would recommend eliminating the current number 4 and have that be wrapped into the language of number 5. I don't mean add it to that, but it's my understanding that the language of number 5 would include that.
Okay, so, we are on Administrative Regulation 5145.21. Just want to make sure.
Yes,
We're all on
and
the
if
same
we,
Page 2 of 3.
I'm sorry, I kind of jumped ahead, but if we
Yes.
made that change, then on 5145.2, we would need to take out the word is profane in the first paragraph.
Let me make sure that I'm clear. You said to eliminate item 4, but to weave the word profanity into 5? Is that
I'm
correct?
sorry, no, I did not make myself clear.
Okay,
I think the issue of profanity is already, the concept of it is included in the existing language of 5. So I would leave 5 the way it is and
Okay.
take 4 out.
okay, got it. Thank you.
Only would be then renumbered to be number 4.
Got it.
Right, and then we'd have to change under prior restraint, we'd have to change the number 5 in that first line to 4 types of limitations listed above.
Okay. Noted.
Okay, any other comments or
Now,
questions from board members?
Just pointing out again that on 5145.2, that would mean pulling out is profane from the first paragraph, the first underline. Where it
Okay.
says is profane.
Delete the words
It
is profane.
Is profane, and just
Okay.
keep or violates
Violates.
professional standards of journalism.
Okay, it's noted.
Okay, any other questions and or comments? Okay. Is there a motion?
I will move to approve as amended the language of the third reading and approval of Administrative Regulation 5145.21 School Publications Code and revision of Administrative Regulation 5145.2 Freedom of Speech Expression.
Second?
Okay, moved and seconded. Is there any further discussion? Mr. Herron?
Did you include in that 5145.2?
I
Yes.
think I did.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Okay, so it includes the board policy and the administrative regulation.
I don't think there is a board policy, it's just administrative.
I'm sorry.
regulations.
They're both ARs. It includes the first AR and the second AR.
Correct.
Okay? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that moves us on then to item E3, the approval of resolution number 2010/2011-47 of the Board of Education of the Santa Barbara Elementary School District prescribing the terms and authorizing the issuance of bonds of the district, approving forms of and authorizing execution and delivery of a paying agent agreement, a bond purchase agreement, a continuing disclosure certificate, and the official statement, authorizing distribution of the official statement and sale documents, and authorizing execution of necessary certificates.
Okay.
Well, Eric Smith, Deputy Superintendent, wins the award for lengthiest title and lengthiest legal document attached. So Eric will present this, and it's very similar to what will be presented in the next item for the secondary district.
That's correct. I'm actually very excited about bringing this item forward. I mean, it's kind of the end of a journey we started last spring when we retained Godby Research to do a community opinion survey to see if there was sufficient support to pass a Prop 39 bond, first in the elementary district and then subsequently in the next item in the secondary district. as you know, both measures passed with overwhelming supermajority support, even though we only needed 55% to prevail. In the elementary, we sought and gained approval for $35 million in bonding authority. This first series would be $15 million to stay consistent with our covenant with the community relative to a tax extension, which is not truly a tax extension, but a mimic of a tax extension. So keeping the tax rate substantially similar to what it is right now. So what you have before you is a large legal document, which the resolution will authorize all the attachments. And why don't I speak to what this resolution does? Obviously, it authorizes $15 million in general obligation bonds. It approves U.S. National Bank as the paying agent. It basically confirms that we're going to do a negotiated sale rather than a competitive sale. It basically approves that we're going to do a continuing disclosure to bondholders. It approves the official statement, which is an attachment, which is a disclosure item. It basically validates who the financing team is relative to our financial advisor, and that's Joanna Bose from K&N out in the audience. Also, Chronic Moskovitz, who's both our bond counsel and disclosure counsel, and then identifies who the authorized agents within the district are to execute the attached documents. So Joanna's here to answer any questions. This differs a little bit from the second item in the sense that we're going with we don't have any qualified construction bonds, and you'll see that. But it's substantially similar to what we thought we would do in terms of issuance. It's now before us. I would probably add that I think the board's aware of it. I'm not sure the public's aware, as we went through our rating process with both Moody's and Standards & Poor. And I wish I knew the ratings, but they were both exceptional. Do you have that off the top of your head, Joanna? Yeah, very good, especially in this climate. So we were very happy with the rating.
For the record, what did you say?
Do you want to say it again, Joanna?
He doesn't have a mic, so if you would come to the thing.
Yeah, they don't have identical rating systems, so, and you might want to.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the board, superintendent, and deputy
It's not-
superintendent. I'm Joanna Bose. I'm very formal.
I wonder if the mic's on. Is the mic on?
I need to stand closer?
Yes.
All right. I'm Joanna Bose, and I am the district's financial advisor. And to your question, Eric did a fabulous job on the rating agency calls where he has to speak for close to an hour about anything that they want to ask about. And that includes educational stuff, that includes a lot of different things. And so the meetings came back with Moody's rating you AA2 and Standard & Poor's rated you A+, which are very strong ratings. And that's for both districts, obviously.
And then if the board acts on this affirmatively, we would expect, we would go through the rest of the process on May 18th.
Correct.
And we'd be able to access our money probably May 19th, and then we could do those journal entries we need to do that the board previously approved. So we're asking for your approval on this item. And if you have any questions of either Joanna or I, we'd be more than happy to answer those at this time.
Thank you. Okay, Mr. Herron?
A couple questions. Why am I approving the method of sale being a negotiated sale versus a public sale?
It is part of the transparency process that a board goes through, so they understand that there is a difference of sale, and that the recommendation that we made to the district was a negotiated sale, and why. And the reason that was done is because of what's happened in the municipal bond market with pricing since 2008, and the very ability of competitive sales and people not showing up for competitive bids. I can get into a description of the two. They're very different types of sale. But it needs to be discussed, and the board needs to be aware of the type of sale.
And I would add that in a negotiated sale, we can pick the writer is want to actually sell them.
Right.
So we minimize risk that way.
Right.
In a competitive sale, it's similar to competitive bid. We don't know who's going to show up. You get the lowest bid. We're more comfortable with this relationship. And there's a significant amount of longitudinal data out there that shows there's not a significant difference in, cost savings one way or the other between negotiated and competitive sales. And I could probably get that for you if the board would like to see it in a board brief.
It used to be in the old days, 20 years ago, a lot of, in the state of California, when general obligation bonds were issued, they were mandated to be done by competitive sale. And that meant you pick a day and a time, and you send out a notice of sale to any of the investment banking firms, the underwriting firms, and they have the option to bid or not to bid. Well, up until 2008, a district like Santa Barbara would have maybe gotten, I don't know, 12 or 15 bids all around the country for their general obligation bonds. It's great credit, everybody knows about Santa Barbara. But since 2008, the underwriting firms have changed the way they are structured and what they do and how they use their capital. And fortunately, Eric has selected a team that is very strong in understanding how underwriters work, and we will be able to secure a very good interest rate for you, as good as I think you would find 10 or 15 years ago. So I'm not concerned about you getting a fair price or the best price, which is usually the argument for a competitive price, a competitive sale. The days are greatly changed, and we have a very reputable underwriter, and I actually was an underwriter at one point, so I understand all the games. So
Yeah.
now the fun begins.
And I would also probably expand on that Joanna's role is one of fiscal oversight over the underwriter in a negotiated sale. So she protects our interest.
Okay. I just wanted that to be of record. The other thing, this is 15 million of 35.
That's correct.
The other one for the measure H, not H,
For the
for
Secondary.
the secondary is 25 of 75.
Right.
Two questions related to that. I was under the impression earlier that we might have as much as 35 million in the secondary. Then it dropped to 30, now I see it's 25. The question I have then, for the public, when will we qualify for the rest?
I mean, that's a function of a couple of things. I mean, remember, you have an overarching constraint that you're trying to keep the tax rate as stable as possible. So as debt is paid off from the outstanding bonds from B and I 98, if that ramps down, then you can issue more debt. So I think right now our structure is to go back in 3 more years in the elementary and 3 more years in the secondary, but I...
2 to 3 years, and to a degree, it's also structured around your
And-
capital, your facilities plan and how things are built. There is another rule that you're supposed to spend 85% of your money within 3 years. That doesn't always happen. I don't
Right.
think that's going to be your case, but I think that's one reason why we scaled it back, was the scheduling of the projects as well.
So we really have 3 things. We have the overarching constraint, which I call, the covenant with the community, which is the tax rate constraint. We've got what's happening in the markets with respect to interest rates and when it's favorable to issue. And then you've got what's project-driven based on the backlog. And you remember, you have a distinction between things that are shovel-ready and things that we're going to gear up and do design work, either are in working drawings now or just an idea or whatever the case. So you have this continuum of projects. So it's how you overlap all of those that determine, when you're going to go back out. But hypothetically, we think we're going to go back out again in 3 years.
And that makes the importance of making sure what we do today are the top priority items across the board. And it's less money now than I thought we had a month ago or 2 months ago, 3 months ago. So it's not, in the scheme of things, where the public thinks we have $100 million, we don't, and where our staffs think we might have that much, we don't have a great deal of money to spend.
No, you don't have that because of the existing debt out there. If you had no debt, you could probably issue all of it now and stay consistent with your covenant in terms of what you thought the tax rate would be, but that's not the case.
Okay, Mrs. Deacon?
And I think you just were addressing the fact that as we phase out of Measure V debt, we move into this.
Right.
Um,
It's kind of a tiered approach
Right,
where,
it-
right,
it
one
was a
goes down
ladder.
and
one
it's stacked on
moved down,
top,
the other
correct.
moved up. I suspect there are members of the public who might like to invest in our school district and purchase these bonds. Can you talk a little bit about the mechanism that they might want to do that? I know the underwriter has to issue them and they'll become available in the market. And I'm curious about the interest rate. I mean, on one hand, the taxpayers probably want it low, but investors want it high.
Exactly right.
So how do we hit upon a fair interest rate, or does the underwriter determine that?
To your first question, the process is the underwriter that was selected was Piper Jaffray. So to buy the district's bonds, you would have to have an account with Piper Jaffray, or in the case of how it usually happens, there are other firms, for example, like Morgan Stanley or Charles Schwab, who know that the bonds are going to be priced on May 4th, and they will call and place orders because they have customers that have indicated interest. So that's the selling process, if you will. To your question about interest rates, I have a very good relationship with the people at Piper, but now that goes out the window because, now we get down to the nitty-gritty about what I want for the district and what he's willing to give. And what it is, it's really a meeting of the minds of where the market is. So what we do is we provide, and Eric will have this next week, pricing comparables. So, for example, for the secondary school, there is a qualified school construction bond component, which is taxable, and there's a tax-exempt piece. So there's two pieces to the secondary school. Well, last week, there were 4 qualified school construction bonds that were sold with similar or a little higher rating than yours. So we have an idea, based upon what the market and the interest rates were last week, what we think it will look like this week and next week. Now, granted, if Mr. Bernanke says something tomorrow, this all could change.
Yeah.
Right. And that is exactly the point. So if Mr. Bernanke says, oh, so QE 2 is going to end in June, he's going to say that. But if he says anything about short-term interest rates, then I can't, anything I say tonight, I have to be excused because I don't know what's going to happen. But it's that kind of issue. It's they always look at economic indicators, which we'll be providing to Eric, things that will drive a good sale and lower interest rates. There are also, on the other hand, things that happen that are not good. So, as they said, we have comparables, and that's where we start, and then we also look at all the costs involved and try to minimize those. So it's really our due diligence, and what we do best is, to your fiduciary responsibility, and our biggest responsibility is being your pricing consultant.
Okay, do we have a motion on this item?
I will move that we approve resolution number 2010/2011-47.
Okay.
Second?
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. That moves us on to item E4. We are about 15 minutes behind schedule. This item is scheduled for 10 minutes, but I know some of it may be similar to what we just reviewed.
It's substantially similar, with one exception. Obviously, in the secondary district, we have a greater authority, 75 million. In this particular instance, we're asking to issue 25 million, and actually it's broken out into a couple component parts. As you know, the district was successful in acquiring qualified construction bonds in 9.2 million, so that's basically folded in within the 25 million, and the difference being 15,800,000 to round it out to a $25 million issuance. With the exception of that issue, it is substantially similar to the prior item. It's in the secondary district. All the other issues that we just discussed would be applicable. So we'd be asking for your approval at this point in time, and hopefully I can gain some time on the clock too.
Are there any questions on this item? Okay, then
I will
do
go
we
ahead
have
and
a
move that
motion?
we approve resolution number 2010/2011-48.
Second?
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, that brings us to item E5 then, which is also Mr. Smith's.
We're at to 40 million. We might as well make it 65
We
million.
may
right?
as well. So,
Except we have to
Yes,
pay
so
this back.
yes, let me read the title of this one, and I apologize for not reading the title of E4. E5, approval of resolution number 2010/11-49, authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed $25 million in funds for fiscal year 2011 2012, and authorizing the issuance and sale of 2011-12 tax and revenue anticipation notes, known as TRAN, for the Santa Barbara School Districts, and authorizing the execution and delivery of documents related thereto.
Okay, thank you. As is customary, each year we issue a trans because it's a cash flow device. Basically, we're able to borrow at tax exempt rates and use this money to basically assist our cash flow over the course of the year, because for the most part, we're heavily dependent on property taxes, because even though one district's barely in basic aid and the other's in revenue limit, even in the revenue limit district, which is our secondary district, our proportion of taxes to state aid is extremely disproportionate towards taxes. And since taxes are only collected and distributed twice a year, you have significant cash flow deficits, because your expenses really start in July and are increased in September when your teaching staff comes back and your payroll is expanded. So we have to have a mechanism to meet payroll and pay our bills until all our cash comes in. And then that's been exacerbated to some extent because we have an apportionment that's distributed us in terms of state aid from the state, but the state's been gimmicking a lot of that through apportionment deferrals, moving them into subsequent fiscal years. So it's creating even a worse cash position for us, which makes trans an even more viable option. As you remember, last year we had very little alternate liquidity because we had no money in other funds. That'll be different going forward, but obviously I think that money will be used fairly quickly over the next 3 years. I think Board Member Herron wanted to know exactly how quickly, and I can't tell you exactly how quickly. So it's vital that we have a trans. As I said, it's a short-term, non-voter approved debt mechanism that we're required to pay back by June 30th. Usually that money is paid back much earlier than June 30th because it has what they call sequestered dates, usually January 31st, March 31st, and we have to factor that in to our whole revenue to expense cash flow analysis, so we can make sure that everything's paid back by June 30th. In the good old days, we used to earn arbitrage when we used to be able to borrow at tax-exempt rates and reinvest that money in taxable securities, and we'd have what we called the spread. We could actually earn interest, but interest rates suck now, and so we just needed to stay alive. So, yeah, that's
Is that professional jargon?
That's a technical term. So we're asking for your approval at this time.
Okay, do we have any questions or comments? Ms. Parker?
My question was just about the pooling with Goleta Union, Hope, and Orchid Union. What sort of benefit are we seeing financially from doing that, and how did it work out with these particular districts?
Well, actually, we went to the Santa Barbara Consortia a couple years ago because, interestingly enough, Piper Jaffray runs the CSBA pool, and like 3 years ago when we were negative, they want to take us. And so actually Wells Fargo said, we can do something for you. We basically got in this pool, and the districts that are represented here kind of change from year to year. I think one year we had Guadalupe and Orcutt and Santa Maria High School. So they're members, but only some, depending on their own particular needs. They might not participate every year, but because of our issues, we have to participate every year. There are benefits to pooling in terms of economies of scale. I'm not sure if we'd look at going back to Piper now because our position has changed significantly in terms of our interim certifications, but we've been happy with these people, so I don't see any real reason to go back, and so.
Ms.
Can I
Deegan?
just add to that I know we were pooled with at least a few of these previously.
Yes, that's
and
true.
Because they're, for the most part, I think basic aid districts, they've been doing it a long time because they depended so heavily on property taxes that they were always having to borrow up front where we weren't quite as much.
Sometimes they're basic aid, or sometimes they're districts that are in really bad cash positions, like Guadalupe's in a situation like that. Even their revenue limit, they have very low AV. And so, if you're and I think I explained this to the board once before, if you're a revenue limit district and you have low AV and you're highly dependent on state aid,
Can you just clarify that's
Define
assessed
AV.
value?
assessed valuation, yeah. If you have low assessed valuation or property tax values and you're, let's say, you know, in our particular instance, our revenue limit might be 90 million and 80 million of it is, you know, property taxes. In a district like Guadalupe, it might be totally reversed. And so things like, you know, apportionment deferrals, those things really hit you hard because you have no liquidity. Yeah. Joanna, did you want to say something?
Because they don't have a financial advisor for this pool, so I've been trying to talk to Wells Fargo. It was actually started in '91, and they set up an agency through the county of Santa Barbara, because that's the name of it, but the county's not really involved. And Wells had a mission to provide the lowest cost, a much lower cost than the CSBA pool. And it's what's great about your pool, and I work with Cold Spring, and I recommend it, I'm not sure they can do that, they go into this pool. I think every Santa Barbara school district should be in this particular pool, because the name of the county works so much and help you with your pricing. And people do come in and out depending on that, on what they need. But because most of the ratings of the districts in Santa Barbara County are pretty similar, not all, but pretty similar, unlike the CSBA pool, where they have to do now tranches, they have to do levels, because there's so many districts that are negative or qualified, it
Right.
pulls everybody down. So this is just it's a very good structure for your TRAN. I just want to reinforce the decision. It's a good program.
You raise an interesting point, because I know board member Parker always asks me about branding and use the Santa Barbara name, and so I don't know how many times I've been on conversations either with Joanna or underwriter that say, well, the name Santa Barbara just has panache, and it's gonna carry a lot of weight. I mean, so
It does.
it's good in the market.
It's great in the market. Thank you.
Okay, are we ready to move on to our motion?
I'll make a motion, and I'll just add that I hope that panache carries over into our superintendent search as well. So I will move to approve resolution number 2010-2011-49, authorizing the borrowing of not to exceed 25 million in funds for fiscal year 2011-12. And I'll abbreviate it, but it's approval of the TRAN, going into the TRAN pool.
Okay, is there a second?
I will second that.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposition? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. That we move on to item E6, approval of board action on student discipline case numbers 10/11-05, 10/11-33, 10/11-42. And before we begin this, I would like to indicate that the board has chosen to not act on case number 10/11-05, and ask that it be brought back to us with additional information. And I will forward the information that the board would like to receive on that item. Okay, so we will move on to the next two cases. Is there a motion on these?
In case 10/11-33, I move that we approve the stipulated agreement for a one-school year expulsion.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion?
Can we add that one school year ends in January of 2012?
Okay,
Certainly.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Okay, motion carries 5-0.
In case 10/11-42, move to uphold the findings and recommendations of the Administrative Hearing Panel for a one-school year expulsion that ends in January 2012.
Second.
Okay. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries 5-0. Okay, that brings us then to the completion of our action agenda and our break, and we are almost exactly on time. So, very good, Mr. Smith. We made that time up. We will take a 15-minute break, and we will return for our conference.